Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where I am going to be talking about the Aislinn 15th century knight sword made by Deepeeka, sent to me kindly by Cult of Athena to talk about with all of you guys. So, first off, right off the bat, the Aislinn is absolutely gorgeous. Not just talking about this lovely grip here, but the scabbard is absolutely beautiful. Stunning leather work on it. And it has this gorgeous belt that it has a rig for it. So you don't need to worry about any sort of sword belt, frog, or anything with this because you are all set to go with just the scabbard. Now the fittings on this thing are gorgeous. You can see the lovely detail work on there. And well, that's just beautiful. So, scabbard aside, though, what we're all really here to talk about and here to see today is the sword. So, the Aislinn 15th century knight sword by Deepeeka is a pretty standard Type 15 arming sword. Nothing too unusual about it. If I did have to pin a couple of unusual things about it, they'll all be in the grip, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is a little over a 29-inch blade, little over 3 pounds of weight, which seems a little bit heavy for a sword this size. Let's talk about that for a second. Because, like I mentioned, this is a really gorgeous grip. And a part of what makes this grip so gorgeous is the fact the crossguard and the pommel are both made out of solid bronze. Now, bronze is quite a bit heavier than steel. So, where most swords would have some sort of steel fittings here, you have bronze, so you have a lot more weight here. You do have more weight, but all of that weight is in your hand. So while you might feel this after hours and hours and hours of wearing it at your hip, not likely, because realistically 3 pounds is not a lot, you're not going to feel it very much in your hand. Because when you're holding a sword, you want that weight to be as far back towards your hand as possible. That way, you can move that tip wherever you want it to. It is nice and fast and agile because all of your weight is right where your hand is. So, that grip is gorgeous. Look at it. Another thing that I really love about this grip is the fact that instead of your standard leather wrap like a lot of the swords have, it is a pair of bone scales on either side of the tang. So you can see it is nice, solid through tang construction, pinned over on the end with those nice bone scales. Gorgeous. Now, like I talked about how you want this tip to be able to move wherever you want, that is very important because it is a Type 15 sword. Now, these Type 15 blades, and I have talked a little bit about them before with another sword that I own, came around in the 15th century. No complete coincidence that Type 15 was in the 15th century. So what's so important about that is the 15th century is where you have plate armor really come into its own. Where before then, in the 14th century, you started to have plates start to come out a little bit here and there, mostly in isolated pieces, individual pieces of armor that a soldier might be wearing. But the 15th century was where you had your full plate armor really come into its own, really come into its heyday. And so when you have an opponent wearing cloth armor like a gambeson or mail, there's a bunch of different ways that you can really attack someone like that. Of course, thrusting damage is always going to do great, but really to an extent so is slashing damage. Yes, mail is going to be able to avoid being cut through very well. It's probably what it's best at. It's best at armoring and at slashing attacks, but you can still feel the weight of a cut underneath it. Gambeson is great for little harrying attacks, but it's not going to protect you against a real serious blow or thrust. Plate armor, on the other hand, is impervious to just about everything. You would even find plate armor that was impervious to early firearms. That's where the term bulletproofing comes from, but more on that another time. So when you have these opponents wearing full plate armor, you wanted a blade that had a really, really thin tip, like this does, that was really, really agile, where you could put that thin tip wherever you wanted to get it in between the joints of the armor. Because getting that blade in between the joints of the armor was just about the only way you were going to be able to take that other guy down without getting him on the ground. Now, when you have those Type 15 blades on a longsword, you're probably going to be half-swording it quite a bunch, where you have one hand on the blade to really get that extra leverage in there. With an arming sword, that's not really going to be the case, but because this is such a short blade, you can really easily work that tip wherever you want it to go. Now, a little bit more about the appearance of this blade. So yes, very typical Type 15 blade, as we saw. Fuller runs about a third of the way through the blade, which we don't see in all Type 15s, but we do see it in a good number of them. Very good. Triangle. We love triangles. Now, the grip, we talked about how gorgeous it is. And looking at it, you might think that that grip is a little bit big for my hand. And I do have fairly large hands myself. And for some types of swords, you would be absolutely right. If you were looking at a Viking sword or a gladius or something like this, yes, this grip would be big for my hand. But you have to remember, when these swords were being used, 15th century, the guy who's going to be holding this sword was probably going to be a guy who was wearing full armor himself. So a nice, big, armored gauntlet. Now, my hand can fit on here with lots of room to spare. You stick a gauntlet on my hand, suddenly my hand becomes a whole lot bigger. And if I have a little tiny grip that only comes down to here, suddenly my hand's not going to fit onto that grip so well. So where it may seem like there's a little bit of extra space here, and honestly, it's not to the point where it would be a problem unarmored at all. It's still perfectly comfortable without any armor. That space suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. So, Aislinn, 15th century knight sword by Deepeeka, gifted to me kindly by Cult of Athena. Like I said earlier, this is a 29.25-inch blade, just over 3 pounds of weight, made of EM45 steel, as is typical with a lot of Deepeeka blades. Now, Deepeeka is a company where I've had a good amount of luck with some of their stuff before. I've also heard some things about quality control and always being the greatest strength of theirs, but this is a blade that I do not have any qualms against. There are no wiggles in the blade, no kicks off to the side anywhere, no major appearance defects, anything like that. This is a very sturdy construction, very well put together. It is gorgeous, like I said. You can find this on Cult of Athena for about $240 yourself, should you want to check it out. And this is a blade that I would absolutely recommend for people like myself, people who like to talk about swords, who like to look at swords, people who do cosplay, photography, all that stuff. This is who this blade is great for. People like myself, people who are going to be dressing up in cosplay, taking photos, people who want something nice that isn't going to break the bank, hanging on their shelf. So if you are someone like me in all of those aspects, definitely one to check out. Definitely would recommend this. So head on over to Cult of Athena, check out the 15th century Aislinn Knight Sword by Deepeeka. You can get it yourself for about $240, and have a great day.